Well, hey everyone. I'll just kind of keep it casual for a few minutes here. I know we haven't had any kind of audio events for a while. We obviously all had really amazing times with the community calls when we were running those, and we've obviously taken a break during the kind of holiday season. Now rounding out into February, we've still kind of kept those on hold. Just around different priorities with different hosts, with POAP Incorporated, etc. But POAP Citizens is still something that I personally run myself because I think that while community calls are really wonderful for getting kind of a high level view of updates and what's going on in the ecosystem, I want POAP Citizens to be a show where we actually like zoom all the way in. And today we're going to be zooming all the way in to a gentleman by the name of Mentor. Mentor, maybe you want to pronounce your first and last name for me before I butcher it, and then we'll kind of jump in.
Well, the upside of my first name is that you pronounce it exactly as you would expect, mentor. And my last name, well, depends on the country you're in. When I pronounce it in Dutch, it's Palokai. English people usually say Palokai or something along the lines. It's an Albanian last name.
Awesome, very good. I thought it was Palo Cash. Google did tell me it was Palo Kai at one point. I got various answers there, but awesome, great to hear. So, hey everyone, welcome to the POAP Citizen Show. This show again is dedicated to some of the amazing citizens that make up the Proof of Attendance protocol community. Today is Mentor Palokai. He is from POAP Incorporated, so he's from the actual parent company who is temporary sheltering and growing and building the protocol. How are you today, Mentor?
I'm good. Yeah, I spent a lot of time today in a train, but trains are actually really nice to focus and code, so I'm good.
Awesome. I totally agree. I do some of my best work when I'm on airplanes. I don't take as many trains in the US, but when I'm gonna hop on an airplane, I usually don't buy the Wi-Fi, so I prepare a bunch of work and then I'm kind of just offline and I'm able to jam on it. So yeah, I appreciate that a lot. Cool. So yeah, I'm really excited to have you on today to learn more about your POAP story, kind of the role that issuer tools play within the ecosystem. Before we ever get to issuer tools, I have quite a few sections that I have for us to discuss. But before we dig in there, I kind of just wanted to get a quick. I wanted to hear from you about what life was like at a young age, growing up. How was it like where you're from? I mean, were you a collector as a kid? Just kind of give us a little backstory.
Yeah, can do. So I'm a Dutchman from the Netherlands. If, by the way, anyone has any questions while I'm saying this, if you drop anything in the channel community calls, I'll do my best to expound on anything. So yeah, Dutchman grew up in the Netherlands. I'm not sure if any of the people listening have been, but we're a relatively tiny country. If you go from the east to the west by train, it's like an hour max, unless you want to like go from beach all the way to the German border. I grew up in what would be a relatively small city in the Netherlands, but we're very proud that we're still a city. Though now I've moved to the big city Amsterdam. If you're asking whether I was a collector, not really. I always wanted to be a wizard or an inventor. And well, I'll leave it up to you whether I managed to do that. But I was always going about and trying to tinker things together, usually failing, but still having a lot of fun, which I think is the important bit. There's a lot of stuff I could go into, so if you could give me some direction to fly off into, I'd happily do so.
Cool. I think that was a good start because we have so much meat today on the bone that I don't want to get stuck too far on kind of trying to invent new fly topics. I do think that you became an inventor. I think it's you're sort of a wizard as well. I mean, the crazy things that can be done with software at this point are quite amazing. Combined with kind of open source and permissionless and particularly crypto systems. Yeah, inventor, wizard, making crazy things. Cool. We're gonna jump into the first section. The first section I am calling "Interesting Mentor." Why is it interesting, Mentor? Because, well, I think you're pretty darn interesting. I actually found that we both have some pretty kind of similar quirky passions and interests, so I thought this was a good section to start. First time I actually heard about you or learned about you was in ETH Denver. I was talking to Squanch, was talking about how I was potentially joining POAP, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, there's like another guy who's actually like really interesting that works there who you're gonna meet. His name is Mentor." He actually has like a website that talks about how he works and what his work policies are. And so the Squanch sent that to me, and I read it. I read over it, and I thought it was super interesting because it took a lot of the philosophies that I have around from my studies with like Cal Newport and deep work and digital minimalism, avoiding digital distraction, and that Notion page. You change the URL or it no longer exists. So if I was to share it here, the public URL that I have that you shared many months ago in the POAP Slack channel is dead. But maybe you can briefly talk about what I'm mentioning here, and maybe just a minute or two on your basic work philosophies on why you created this document and how you like to work with others.
Yeah, sure. So I can't claim credit for making this kind of document. It's called a working with document. It's mostly popular within the programming spheres, because if you send this to some people, and I'll just pull up the most recent link and drop it in the Discord here in case someone wants to look at it. The idea is that especially if you don't work face to face, it's very hard to get a sense of the person behind an avatar. So I mean, if you're looking at Discord now, I'm sure you have some sort of feeling behind every avatar that's there, including mine. But it tells you absolutely nothing about how I am, how to tell whether I'm happy with what's going on, or how to tell whether I'm very, very upset, and which I don't get very easily, so rest assured. But so the idea of a document behind this is that you're just completely upfront with who you are, what brings you joy in working with other people, and what you find incredibly annoying. And by being upfront about that, you can hopefully buffer away some uncomfortable encounters. So for example, the first bit in my document is the fact that I was born and raised in the Netherlands, and we're known for being very direct to the point of being perceived as blunt or rude by most cultures. There's actually a funny story about why the Dutch used to be the only ones allowed to trade with Japan. It was when we came there with ships, and no one was allowed in except the Dutch, because we were, while very rude, extremely predictable, and it was always clear what the Dutch wanted. I have this, you have that, let's do business. Is that okay? Yes, no. That works well with other Dutch people, but we tend to upset a lot of other cultures because we don't mean to be mean or anything. But we can be quite direct. So by taking these kind of things, and perhaps your culture is the exact opposite. You come from a culture where you want to talk around things a little bit, spend some time getting to know people. And if you interact with someone like me, you might get very upset. Whereas all in all, I'm just trying to be nice, or the other way around. And a document like this can really buffer some of the potential clashes you might have had.
Awesome. Yeah, I thought it was great when I read it, and I actually had not read one of those before, so I actually just must have not interacted with very many programmers in my time, which feels directionally accurate, kind of reflecting on my professional life. What I liked was the communication platform usage, how you provide some sort of timeline or expectations around when you respond. I feel like we live now in this hyperactive hive mind culture where if you don't respond to a Slack or an email within minutes or hours, or a text message or whatever that is, or you don't answer your phone, people they kind of go crazy. And I think setting norms, especially in a workplace, is really helpful. And heads down building is so crucial, and not getting bogged down by these back and forth asynchronous communications. So love that. That was my first experience with Mentor. The second time I experienced Interesting Mentor was in a private Discord channel dedicated to sleep technology for weird people who like to optimize their sleep. I was invited here by Superfizz, and I crossed paths with Mentor again. At this point, we still haven't spoken, so just these two random data points. Tell me a little bit about your philosophies around sleep. Why are you in this weird sleep Discord? Just give a little back color on there.
Well, while I'm a programmer now, I am academically trained as a biologist, so I really like knowing how the body works and what you can do with that on a practical level. And there's a thing Tim Ferriss is fond of saying. It's like what gets measured gets managed. And one of the things that is a challenge for me is I'm very good at winding up and very bad at winding down. Like if I was a car, then my gas pedal works very well and my brake doesn't work all that well. So for me, actually, the wearable that you're mentioning is the Aura Ring, and it has one particular variable it measures called heart rate variability, which is very good at predicting how relaxed and recovered you are. And the reason I love wearing this wearable at night is when I wake up, I can have a look at how my body reacted during sleep, how recovered it was physically and emotionally. And if my HRV gets too low, I know I need to take it easy because, like I said, I'm good at going fast. I'm not good at slowing down. So it's my canary in the coal mine.
Awesome. Yeah, love Tim Ferriss. Love being able to measure important things, and heart rate variability is something that I actually keep close track on. Although my problem is I'll keep close track, but then I only will respond to the signals when it's very, very radical or die hard time to pay attention. And I resonate a lot with being able to amp up, but much harder to slow down. So cool. Thanks for covering that there. So everyone, this section again is interesting mentor. Final part of this. I think mentor is actually like an interesting name. Perhaps you can tell me a little bit about the origin of your name. I've never met someone named Mentor. Usually the way I actually remember people in life is I take their first name, I take their face, and I try to connect them with someone else with that same name, and it kind of provides this connection in my brain so I don't forget them, their face, and their name. But tell me a little bit about your name, because you seem like a literal mentor in life. You know, you were a gymnastics instructor, you created this blog, you created a couple books. And we'll dive into those, but tell me a little bit about your name, and do you feel like you are a mentor to others?
It's funny you mentioned that. I forget who it was. I was in a Discord somewhere, and someone mentioned how my name is very close to how I tend to be, and they linked me to this Wikipedia page, which I'm also going to put in the chat here for nominative determinism, which is the phenomenon that people with certain names tend to take certain roles. So yeah, I see where that went. The name itself is from Albania, or Kosovo to be specific. My dad is from Kosovo, which is where the name comes from. In an alternate universe, my name would have been Tom, and perhaps that would have put me on a different path in life. But I do enjoy teaching, writing, thinking. So yeah, the background of the name, Albanian, and as for how it shapes me, I don't know if I wouldn't say it's conscious at all. Like, I'm not striving to live up to my name, but I guess that something being so deep in your subconscious does, trigger you to veer towards certain directions.
Awesome. I had never heard of nominative determinism, but I've always felt like it was like just something that kind of existed, and some people did really align with their names. I think you do with mentor. That's awesome. Anthony stands for priceless. So some people would really agree with me being priceless. Other people say it's the worst name ever. So it depends on who you talk to.
My middle name is actually Anthony.
Ah, wow. So you're a priceless teacher. So that's cool. My middle name is Salvatore. So I'm a priceless savior. But hey,
Nice.
we both got something going on. So tell me about your blog. So you have a blog. I was reading over. It's called Skill Collector Blog. So everyone, his blog is called Skill Collector. I mean, clearly, I think it's important to collect skills in life, but having that blog name is really cool. Yeah, it has actionable articles on productivity, health, and skills. How did that get started? Do you still write on it? Tell me a little bit about it.
The way it started is, while I was studying in Maastricht, when I still thought I was going to be a biologist, I fell into this rabbit hole of like blogs. Blogs were a thing then. There was no TikTok yet. Instagram, I'm not sure was a thing yet. Everyone was on Facebook. Different times, and I feel old now. But yeah, so blogs were a thing. I actually helped a couple of friends who started their own web hosting company, and of course, the only thing we were thinking about was domain names and blogs and that kind of thing. So for a good couple of weeks, I was trying to think of a cool domain name, not even thinking about what to do with it. And then I was sitting in a train one day, and I saw skillcollector.com, and I figured, oh, that's cool, I'll get it. And then it did really resonate with me, and it's sort of the place where if I want to write something, I put it there. I haven't written on it very recently. It's used to be a thing of like I publish every week, then it was every month, and it sort of comes in phases. That the more you scroll back the more you get to like my old study times. There's one on polyphasic sleep where for a while I only slept, I don't know how many hours it was. I think like 5 hours a day or something, or four, in a different sleep schedule. And I would detail projects like that. There weren't really platforms like Medium yet, so there wasn't really a good place to like publish articles and have control over your blog. So for me, it's sort of a catch-all where to put if I want to write, yeah, about anything in particular. I keep my crypto stuff separate though, so there's not a lot of crypto things on Skill Collector.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, once you're talking about productivity, health, and skills, and then you bring in macroeconomics and distributed systems and stuff, it probably, yeah, maybe it can live in a separate place for sure. So the final thing we'll talk about in the interesting mentor section is you have also written multiple books. You wrote Never Work Again. Well, I don't know if that was a book, but it was sort of a compound calculator for retirement. I've followed the early financial independence FIRE movement for a long time and investing, so that resonated. But what I wanted to hear more about was your book, Smart Work Beats Hard Work. Smart work beats hard work. It really just makes a ton of sense. And tell us a little bit about why you wrote that book, what inspired you, and if there's any just interesting stuff from inside of it that you want to share.
So for me, writing as a general rule is, whether it's code or words, it's something you do because something is in your head and it's too busy in your head. So that happens for me for software and for books, or articles for that matter. And this particular book is a collection of all the stuff I learned up to that point. Some of it is straightforward, some of it's not. There's a section on productivity, which I'm still fascinated that no one during, say, high school or even university covered any of this kind of stuff. You mentioned the mnemonic technique you use to remember people's names. I'm terrible with names. I'm terrible with facts in general. And no one ever taught me that a memory palace is a technique you can use. You can use this relatively easily, for example, to memorize your ledger's mnemonic phrase. Like if you want to entertain a zombie apocalypse scenario where for 10 years you lose track of all your belongings, and 10 years from now you pick up a random ledger, you can access your crypto again. You can do that even if you have a shitty memory. All you need is a technique to do that. And basically that book is a collection of all the stuff that I discovered and found useful. And I wrote it down over a year. I was traveling a lot at the time. And that was the stuff that was in my head that needed to come out. So yeah, one section on productivity, one on health, which is one of my areas of focus due to the aforementioned undergrad in biology. I really like to think about what diet, exercise, etc. does to your health and how to use that productively. And the last section is about money, which I think for a lot, I don't actually know if that's true. I was going to say for a lot of people in crypto that might be a thing. But when it comes to financial literacy, there's actually very depressing metrics of something along the lines of 20 to 30% of a population is financially literate, and the rest aren't. And that is very basic stuff. So yeah, that section was basically all the things that I wish my parents knew. And now, well, now at least I know. So that's, yeah, that was that book.
Awesome. Love it. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that they did not teach us about productivity in school. I feel like productivity and finance, even the basics, I was definitely not taught in school. And it's some of the things that have really, I mean, really productivity, health, kind of career capital and financial capital, or things that I've really focused on the last, say, 10 years. And I got no help with that in school. Like maybe with health, like a basic PE class, and because I didn't study biology or the hard sciences, not much into nutrition and stuff like that. So this book, everyone, Smart Work Beats Hard Work. If you need tips and tactics on how to improve those things, Mentor's got you covered. We're going to move on to the next section. I'm calling this Entrepreneur Mentor. Entrepreneur Mentor, Entrepreneurial Mentor, however you want. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. I've ran many small businesses when I was younger. But you're the person that seems to have taken it kind of much further, or you still embrace and live in that type of mindset where I don't necessarily. In 2012, it looks like you worked as an event organizer for the Center of Entrepreneurship in your home city or home country at least. You participated in kind of various startup events, entrepreneur weeks, etc. Tell us a little bit about how being an event organizer for this Center for Entrepreneurship went, and yeah, maybe any interesting learnings you have from it.
Well, I think just in general, it's kind of magical that if you are willing to organize things, things happen and people show up. I didn't always think of it like that. I, for some reason, always feel compelled to organize things, to make stuff, usually free for people slash world. And for a while, my view on that was it sucks that not everyone is doing this. Like if everyone could just organize a cool event at least once a year, then we would have cool stuff to do every day of the year. And I would have a feeling of why aren't people doing this, and why do I have to be the one? But I kind of the past years kind of flipped that mentally, where it is super cool that if you want to do something like organize an event and you do it, people show up. And what you say about my time in Maastricht, which is the place where I studied and met my now wife, there was a lot of events going on for entrepreneurship, and I participated in one called 3 Day Startup, which is exactly what it sounds like. Over a weekend, you would start a startup, you would think of a product, prototype it, and then pitch investors at the end. I was not thinking that this was my kind of thing to do, but it looked nice and it was free. So you're a student and there's free food and you get to do fun stuff, so why not? And that's sort of how I rolled into it. And at the end of that event, the organizers sort of put out a, hey, does anyone want to help organize the next one? And to my surprise, no one said yes except me. Note that like 80% of the people in there were people studying business, MBAs, that kind of thing. So I felt very out of place. So I was very surprised that no one else really stepped up. And then after that, I basically just try to step up when I can, because if you do stuff, things happen. And if you don't step up, then occasionally, in many cases, no one else will, and then things just don't happen.
I completely agree. Love how you kind of went into that, just looking for something fun to do, and maybe some free food as I don't know, a broke college student, but probably not a rich college student, and you ended up getting a lot more out of that, especially because you said you were the one who stepped up, even though the people who had the MBAs and the business, or studying it for MBAs and business degrees, that's probably something that they should have been doubling down on, but I guess the biology guy did. And here we are today. I guess a year later, or a couple years later, depending how you want to look at the timelines, you went through Draper University. So I've known about Tim Draper for a long time. Obviously, he's one of the most well-known venture capitalists. His son now is a big VC as well. What got you interested in Draper University? Well, first tell people, what is Draper University? Maybe what your experience was like, and how did you end up getting there?
Well, I think I can actually take a roundabout path there. That would be kind of fun. While I was organizing all these entrepreneurship events, a lot of opportunities open up where people are, telling you about all these events going on. And if you are an organizer for these kind of events, and this is a tip to everyone, if you organize stuff, you'll find out that there is a very small cohort of people in any industry that are the organizers. This is the same in crypto. This is the same in the entrepreneurship space. When it comes down to it, even a huge sector tends to have like a handful of people that could have dinner together, that are like the core, that are people that keeps like stepping up. So while I was organizing this, one of these core people in the Netherlands was like, hey, there's this conference going on in New York. And to small town Dutch boy, that was very exciting. So I went to this conference. It was from a group called Kairos, the Kairos Society. I think they changed names now to Sigma and completely became something else. But at the time, it was for student entrepreneurs. I raised money by talking to all of my family members here, asking, hey, can you donate any money? I'm trying to go to New York to this conference thing. And because my family's very kind and I have a very large Dutch family, everyone pitched in a little bit and I got to go to New York. And at this conference, we're in the New York Stock Exchange. I feel completely out of place. And they're doing these breakout sessions talking about, I think it was 3D printing, because that was like the hot stuff at the time. And I'm sitting next to this man who turns out to be Tim Draper. He's wearing a superhero tie. He's got very prominent eyebrows. He's very energetic. And he keeps bringing up that 3D printing would be great for custom sex toys. And I'm completely confused because I don't know who this man is. I don't know who anyone is. I'm in the United States. I don't know any people who are supposed to be famous people. And during this conversation about 3D printing, afterwards, he says, "Hey, I run a summer program. You should show up, or you should apply." And I didn't know what that was about. I kind of forgot about it because he was just in my head the sex toy guy with a superhero tie. Then after a couple weeks later, I think I must have put myself on an email list or something, because I got a notification that the deadline was approaching to apply for Draper University. At this time, it was like, I think $5,000 or something like that, or more, to attend. And I don't know if it's normal for Americans, but for a Dutch guy, our like yearly tuition for university is maybe €2,000, and the government pays for that. So that was like a lot of money for me. So I tried to write the most compelling application I can and ask them, "Hey, can you give me like a 100% discount? Very pretty, please." And the cool thing is, so we have this saying in Dutch. I'm not sure if there's an English translation. Niet geschoten, altijd mis. If you don't shoot, you always miss. So they ended up not giving me a 100% discount, but a very, very, very big discount, which ended up being completely worth it. And that's how I ended up at Draper University near San Francisco. And that is, as a matter of fact, how I got in touch with Bitcoin and everything that came after.
Wow. So we can trace the mentor we know today all the way back to, at least in part, a room in the New York Stock Exchange with Tim Draper talking about sex toys. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is correct.
Wow, amazing story. This is POAP Citizens, y'all, and this is Entrepreneur Mentor. Great story. Love that. Final part of Entrepreneur Mentor, because I did want to cover something that you're still running today, is Generous VPN. Generous VPN, this is a freemium VPN service. I personally use Nord like an idiot, NordVPN, probably because I didn't do my due diligence and now I just use it because I am lazy. Tell me why NordVPN sucks, why Generous VPN, your product, is just something that's probably better for someone who's security, privacy conscious, should be using.
So NordVPN doesn't suck. So rest assured.
Wonderful.
The genesis story of Generous VPN is actually something completely different, because ironically, the security is actually mediocre. What I ran into is, as I got more and more proficient with servers, with websites, with all that kind of jazz, it became obvious to me how easy it is to run a VPN server. It legit is $5 a month. To run a server. I now run some more powerful servers, so it's I don't know, a little more per year. It's a couple $100. And backtrack roundabout. Here we go again. When I was 16, I went to China, and I was going there for a month with my cousin Charlie, and we were going to do kung fu in the mountains there. I was dead set on doing a gap year, and I had saved a lot of money. For what I thought was a lot of money. In retrospect, it was 2,000 euros, to go there and do Kung Fu in the mountains. And one of the things that I did not know I had to prepare for was not being able to access my Gmail in China. I did not have a credit card. Dutch people don't have credit cards. We have debit cards, which don't work online. They're more common now, but then not possible. So I'm trying to access my Gmail and I can't. And I'm trying to figure out how this stuff works. And I find out you need a VPN so that you can circumvent the Great Firewall of China. And then I find out that all of them are paid. And there were no good free ones. It's more common now to have free VPNs, but back then I could find absolutely nothing. So that stuck in my head. And when later I realized, hey, I can make a VPN, it's not so difficult, I figured I should probably make one that's free to use to anyone, that does all the things that I want a VPN to do. For example, 1, it just works. 2, it works everywhere. And 3, it doesn't keep any logs. Just nothing. So if you sign up for Generous VPN, it's actually a very bad business model. You sign up, you connect to the VPN, there's no throttling, you can use it as much as you like. The free one has a bunch of people with a lot of bandwidth. I don't know what they're doing. One could presume they're downloading very legal Linux ISOs from the torrent network. And then there's a premium version for people who want a server that's a little faster and maybe not used by all these freeloaders. One of the things I noticed when I put this online is the majority of users, they come from countries that, 1, don't have credit cards, and 2, even if they would, they don't have enough money to pay for a VPN. There was a lot of Pakistan, there was a lot of Vietnam, there was a lot of Asian, African subcontinent, South America. So the way the Generous VPN works is the free version is usable for anyone for free, no throttling, no limits. And the premium one pays for just about enough to cover the server cost, and that's okay.
That is so cool. I want to double tap on the Kung Fu in the Mountain story. I've done, and yeah, just selfishly, I've done various martial arts my entire life. I've always felt like I wanted to go to a rural mountain and just train with some, new martial arts that I've never tried. Did you end up getting to the mountains? How was training Kung Fu in the Chinese mountains?
Kung Fu as a martial art, in my experience, is rather useless.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun to do it in the mountains. The way that we were trained there, was by the Shaolin monk, and it was a lot of just physical, brutal training. We would, go upstairs and do a frog jump from every step, and then you'd go down. It was a push-up per step, and it was a big stair. I didn't learn a lot of Chinese, but I learned a couple of words. I think one was, or phrases, hen tong, like a lot of pain. Laosha for teacher, so you could say a lot of pain, teacher, when your push-ups were getting too much, and then the teacher would look at us and go, ha ha ha, I game over you. Because he would play video games, and this was his English vocabulary, and he would just think it was marvelously funny that he managed to completely kill us in this training. So yeah, it was fun. I was 19 at the time. It was completely brutal. I am not joking, a gray hair in my beard hair, and I was 19. The nutrition was horrendous. So only after this did I go to university and learn more about nutrition. And looking back, I'm like, I could have gotten so much more out of that if I would have had adequate protein and nutrition intake. But yeah, it was mostly brutal for the mind, which in retrospect was kind of fun. And, me and my cousin Charlie, we were 2 Dutch guys. My cousin was blonde-haired, blue-eyed. I'm dark-haired, blue-eyed. And just, we were like celebrities walking everywhere. Everyone wanted to take a picture. Children were scared at the 2 big giants walking around. It's a different China now, I'm sure. But when we went there, it was, especially because it was a very rural place. I mean, everyone was super nice, super welcoming. But also, it was a completely alien and foreign experience.
Wow. What a wonderful story. I feel like
Wait,
a wonderful
sorry to interrupt. I just realized something. We ended up on stage with Jackie Chan. So when we were there, Jackie Chan was going to do an opening ceremony for martial arts combat, and the organization wanted white-looking people to be background dancers, basically, doing kung fu moves. And this school was the only place that had white-looking people doing kung fu. And here's a link to the opening ceremony. So those little white-suited people, that's us and our classmates. And yeah, in 2010 we were doing the opening ceremony, dancing behind Jackie Chan. It was an adventure. We got to be in his presence, and that was it.
That is absolutely hilarious. So the first section was called Interesting Mentor. The second section was Entrepreneur Mentor. But this is strike back of Interesting Mentor, because that is freaking interesting. The next section is POAP Mentor, which feels very feels just right, especially given your story. If I was you, I would have made a retroactive POAP for my Kung Fu in the Mountains, and probably even a separate POAP for my On Stage with Jackie Chan. Kind of the way I think about POAP is maybe more radical or weird than a lot of people. How I genuinely like to earmark all of life's important moments with POAPs, even though I don't. But we're going to transition here. Well, let me ask, do you have a POAP for Kung Fu in the Mountains?
I do not, and I thinking that the big reason for that is the people who were there with me don't yet have POAP, I think.
Well, that sounds like the best reason why you would give them a POAP then.
I'm not even sure I could contact them anymore. It's like a different life, a different world. We barely had Facebook. Again, I feel old.
Wow. Yeah, man, you're booming out here. Well, I would, anyway, selfishly, I would probably still make a POAP. Anyway, right now, you are a full stack developer at POAP Incorporated. This is POAP Mentor we're talking about, everyone. And this is where we're stewarding, this amazing protocol during its early days, and we're trying to build something that it can store memorable moments or important human memories forever. It's a really bold task. I know you've done a lot of contributions to POAP far before I've arrived, and you're one of our go-to guys, especially on the engineering side. And so I know everyone's going to love to learn about your contributions to POAP. I did want to take a quick step back and just say, like, how do you think about POAP in general, and how did you get involved? So, like, where was the aha moment, and how did you actually start working here? I'm sure there was a couple different steps to that, and they probably include Rocket Pool.
Oh, that most definitely includes Rocket Pool. So for the people who aren't familiar, Rocket Pool is a staking protocol. It's now getting more of a time in the limelight than before. But during COVID, that was the Discord where I hung around the most. It's highly technical people. They're all a lot of fun, and very little when token upser kind of conversations. And the Rocket Pool community is completely obsessed with POAP. And not only that, but POAP's founder, Patricio, he is also one of the early investors in Rocket Pool. So I always knew nebulously of this mysterious warthalter.eth address that was involved with POAP and with Rocket Pool both. And then at some point, I had an idea of something I wanted to build, and I contacted him asking if he would be interested in funding it. And basically, we had a chat, we had a little call, and the conclusion was, sounds cool, but I'm afraid I don't have the time to think about this, but you should totally come work for POAP. And that's how that started. It looked like POAP looks like a place with smart people building interesting things. And as a general rule, that's one way that I like to make decisions. Like, where can you go where there are people that are building cool stuff with passion and autonomy? And that was POAP. And I've been here now for a while, and I'm loving it.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, Rocket Pool has been one of the biggest funnels for cool, interesting users of POAP, as well as new human capital who want to build for and towards POAP. I completely agree with your take on we're building interesting things. There's a lot of smart people here, and everyone is really passionate, or most people are really passionate. And I haven't experienced these three things combined in a workplace before. I've had, one or two of them, but never all three. And so I actually really love the culture we have here and how most or almost all of us are really aligned towards this vision. And so even though there's, ups and downs and interpersonal communications are hard and all these different things that come with workplaces and just, corporations, I think we're doing a lot of great work, and you're one of the big contributors here. So I did want to dive into a few of the things that you've actually built or helped build. And I don't know how much you've built and how much you've helped build of these things. So maybe you can clarify, because there's always going to be teamwork and people who help contribute to these things. Let's say there's three of them, at least that I'm aware of, and that's the ones we're going to cover today. First one, because that's the one I encountered first, is POAP Kiosk. Maybe you want to give some backstory to POAP Kiosk. Who gave the idea, who gave the direction, who built that, how do you think about it? Yeah, just any stories you want on POAP Kiosk.
So the way that started is when I joined POAP, Isabel, who's the COO, was my, or still is my direct report, and we were talking about how I was going to integrate into the teams. I was talking to engineering, getting to know everyone, and trying to figure out how I fit in. And then the magical thing happened where Isabel wanted to just quickly prototype this thing. And now, any engineer in this call knows quickly prototyping something usually means that it's not a small project and it's not a temporary project because there's nothing as permanent as temporary code. So I was talking to Isabel, and what she wanted was something that would dispense POAPs in the form of a QR. And one of the things that I tend to be suited for is kind of self-guided missile work. It's like, hey, we need to go over there. I have no time to tell you what to do, but in a week or two, I need this thing, and then you just let me fly. And that's what Isabel did, which I'm very grateful for, that she just let me go like that. And she said, hey, these are the things that we need. We need a thing that shows a QR with rotating POAP codes. So I made a prototype for that. And then over time, more and more requirements were added. And that is generally how things go in software. So it's after a while, if you build software, and I'm sure there's some people in this call who know this feeling, just start any project assuming it's going to be a long-term thing. So make sure you have your automated testing. Make sure you have automated deployments. Everything will move slower, and the more junior of a programmer you are, the more likely you are to just want to take the shortcut and just quickly build a thing that just works. But it ends up paying off greatly to just assume that everything's a long-term project. And in this case, that's what the POAP kiosk became. Most of it is actually still was made by me, though I'm very happy to say that one of the listeners in, I think, this call under the handle rv.eth is a colleague who I'm very happy joined our little team within POAP and is helping with a lot of the stuff there, because as time progresses, it becomes harder and harder to maintain things on your own. So I'm very grateful for his help in keeping things stable and up to date.
Love that backstory. POAP kiosk is truly a staple when it comes to issuer tools. I've used it in real life situations, and I've seen big brands use it as well. And so, really, really amazing. It's cool to hear that it was a rapid prototype that has emerged into a power issuer tool that is going to probably be at the core staple of issuer tools for the foreseeable future in POAP. Next, I wanted to talk about, and maybe it's not as long, is POAP codes. What is POAP codes, and who generated that idea, and why did it come to be?
So last year in summer, the most sweltering European summer where it was 40 degrees Celsius, I have no idea how much Fahrenheit that is, we were going to ETHCC in Paris, the Ethereum Community Conference, as a POAP team. So I was going, RV was going, and another one of our colleagues, Fiel from the Netherlands, was also going. Not sure if she's in the call as well. And we were, I'm not sure if it was the way there or the way back, but as we were going there, we were looking at domain names for some reason. And again, it's, I guess, an addiction that's hard to let go of. And we saw POAP.codes was available. So without any intent, I registered it because it looked like an epic domain name. So this is actually not an official POAP tool, but now it's basically the playground for whenever I need a tool to do anything POAP and it doesn't exist, I put it in POAP.codes. So the first thing was a way to check which of your mint links are still available. So if you have a links.txt file and you're giving them out manually, for example on Discord or whatever, it's really hard to keep track, like which ones have been claimed, which ones have I copied. So POAP.codes is a way to do that. And then right before Christmas, I added an airdrop tool that allows you to airdrop codes to addresses with the intent of distributing a POAP that we were giving out for POAP checkout, which I'm going to guess is the next thing that we're going to head to.
Yeah, and that's so funny because I've been well aware of POAP codes. I've referred it to a couple kind of key community power users, but I did not scroll down and see this new airdrop POAPs feature. An airdrop tool has been something that people have requested. Typically, they use POAP delivery for, and obviously, we all know POAP delivery requires the user to sort of opt in, or in a way, technically. But this is like permissionless airdropping. Is that correct?
That is correct, though I hasten to add, this is a tool that is sensitive to abuse.
Yeah.
So that's what the team is very, very careful about. So don't use this tool if you're going to do something that is against the POAP ethos. And I cannot guarantee that it stays online. So because POAP.codes is not an official tool, basically whenever Patricia or Isabel tells me, hey, we don't think it's a good idea, I just turn the off switch on it.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I saw this. Like, this is one of those with great power comes great responsibility things, and this is the only one that exists in the wild. So, kudos to building it, and I definitely can see some valuable function as well as abuse. With like comparable to things like tornado cache, etc. Some tools can be really good, and some tools can do bad things as well. POAP checkout. Yeah, it's the final thing I wanted to talk about. We only have about 11 minutes left here. We really got to hear about your interesting background, your entrepreneurial spirit, and now I kind of wanted to learn more about this POAP tool you've built, POAP Checkout. I think it already has done a lot of cool things for some communities, but I think it can revolutionize the way people think about POAP, interact with POAP, not only from issuers who need to monetize, but collectors who actually really appreciate these digital collectibles that are willing to pay small fees. How did POAP Checkout get started? Do you have any interesting stories around it, or why you find it valuable?
Well, the way it got started is actually as kind of nebulous, the same way that the QR thing was. The idea was to see whether, just as a test, to see does it make sense to charge money for POAPs. A lot of when you build a new tool is just seeing what works. What do people like using? What do people not like using? So funnily, Checkout actually has a lot of fans and a lot of people who are very nervous about it. Because for a lot of people, POAPs are, in their nature, a free thing to commemorate being at an event. And I respect that. For a lot of people, that's what it is. And what POAP Checkout is a way to sell your POAPs. The reason was kind of twofold. One was as a Sybil resistance mechanism. So one of the big problems that POAP runs into is farmers, people who just come to claim POAPs, but they didn't actually engage in any community or event. I think this originated from a number of communities using POAPs for airdrops and saying, hey, if you own certain POAPs, you get an airdrop of a token. And that spawned a lot of people to just want to get every POAP regardless of what it meant to them emotionally. But as a protocol, we really value that emotional connection to your POAPs. So Checkout initially started as a way to make sure that someone has, or a collector has, some level of barrier to claiming the POAP. And paying a small fee, which the issuer can set, is one way of doing that. Now, funnily, what happened after is people start using the product and they start asking to use it for different things. And one of the use cases is actually fundraising for communities. So the biggest POAP checkouts where the most money has gone through are actually communities raising funds for nonprofits, for DAO treasuries. And in that sense, POAP becomes more of a proof of donation almost. So whether it's going to continue going that way, we'll see. But I'm actually quite excited about how POAP Checkout is being used in the wild.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. It has so many different benefits, and the first one, yeah, being Sybil resistance. I mean, of the people, of the audience members we have here, only X amount of them are actually single individual humans, and a lot of them, and if you're a listener, you might be here just for the additional POAP incentive, and you might have multiple accounts, and this is something that we deal with in a digital world, even as far as Elon Musk is fighting over Sybil attacks. And so POAP Checkout solves that as a kind of spam resistant fee meter. But then I just love the ability to sell POAPs, because if you're an issuer and you find it's a precious digital collectible, I even think that all my POAPs are worth at least $1. And if I'm not willing to pay $1 for my POAP, I really don't want it in my collection. As I've kind of matured in my POAP journey, I just don't want all the POAPs. I want all the POAPs that I have a kind of close emotional connection with. And especially in light of any really good filtering tools, or the ability to just burn POAPs easily, I actually don't like collecting POAPs that I don't love, and I've gotten these spam POAPs at events, in years in the past, and they kind of are in my collection, and I don't like them, and I need to get rid of them. But my favorite POAPs are the ones that, again, are memorable, and when I pay a little small fee for them, especially for a good cause, it makes it even more memorable. And then I think POAP Checkout can even be used as this new interesting tool that I've even considered to spin up DAOs. The proof of concept I've thought about with my friends is, every time we have a fun event or an inside joke, we can mint a POAP and everyone puts in money, and over time you're building this single treasury that is governed by these POAPs, that you can do things with, the treasury, and the explicit voting token is the POAPs. So that's kind of cool, and it ends up being kind of like a juice box style thing, and pending security regulations, it's just a new way to capital formation and voting, etc. So you've done a lot of great work. I really appreciate it. What else excites you, or that you see coming on the POAP radar? This will kind of be my final question. So this can be totally open-ended. This can be about philosophy, it can be about tooling, it can be about the builder ecosystem. You take it away with however you're thinking.
Well, one of the things I think is so epic about POAP is it's open and free to use to any developer who wants to build with it. Crypto is really fun, and the permissionlessness of it is really cool. But the upshot of POAP is that you don't need to spend money as a developer, which means you can just play around with it and see what it does. I remember being at a hackathon, and this was POAP unrelated, and I was using this tooling from another project. And I mean, it was great. It was very good software, and I was using it to build something cool. But it involved me putting down a $50 bond, basically, in their protocol, which was not retrievable. So it was like a permanent temporary deposit. And that's just not really fun to play with. And POAP is the exact opposite. It's fun to play with. People love POAPs because they're so fun to play with. So yeah, what am I excited about? I'm excited about people building stuff. There's an open API. Any developer listening can build anything they want. Conversely, if anyone who's not a programmer has a really cool POAP idea, ping me with your idea, and there's a non-zero chance that the thing that you think is cool will exist. And I think that's so cool about POAP. People just keep building stuff because it's fun. So yeah, do I know what's going to happen the next year? Absolutely not. But it's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, that is really one of the things that most excites me about POAP is, and I've said this for, I don't know, almost a year now, how, in the early days we had this amazing Ethereum protocol that enabled smart contracts, and over the last 5+ years we've seen the emergence of this insanely lush ecosystem of applications and tools. And I feel in a similar way about POAP, right? We have this amazing protocol that allows you to preserve and mint memories, and now people are building these cool and amazing tools, and it really is up to the imagination of the builder to build just really amazing things. And you are one of these early builders who, while you are technically hired to build these things, you still build things outside of this scope. And again, it's just, there's so much lush building ground and opportunity, and I hope more and more entrepreneurs realize it, because there's going to be real demand. Happy to let you have any final comments on that, and then we're going to hop into a quick Theo lightning round. A few minutes where Theo might ask you a couple of questions, and then we'll pretty much close out.
Two things. One, anyone listening, if you have an AMA question, either put it here or put it to Theo. Happy to answer anything. And two, if there are super techies here, come check out Onion DAO, a non-profit initiative where we're running Tor exit nodes, and wherever I go, I'm trying to find techies. So if you know what a server is, if you know what a VPS is, and you know what Tor is, come check out Onion DAO.
Awesome. Mentor.
Yes.
How do you think about POAP as kind of the different ways it can be used, right? We see a lot of people who use it for this kind of gamification, user acquisition, user retention tool, and then the whole other side of that is people who are using it for like these deeply personal human moments, like when you, I don't know, you get married to your wife or something. That's a POAP. How do you think about the difference between this like sliding scale? Are all use cases valid for POAP, or only certain use cases valid for POAP? Because over time, this is going to kind of mature with the curation body. And eventually we'll have the curation, people from the curation team on here to discuss this. But I think everyone has a say, and someone who's building tools, I think you should have a say. And so wanted to hear about that.
So there's two things there. So for one, this is not like an official POAP take, right? So as a completely unofficial POAP person, I during my undergrad, I did a course called Anthropology of Science, and one of the things we covered was the anthropology of technology. There's a super cool term in there called interpretive flexibility. It's this idea that once a technology ends up in the wild, then people start doing stuff with it that you don't expect. And that is where the real technological change happens. So if you think of computers back in the day, they didn't used to be personal computers. It used to be mainframes. The reason that personal computers became a thing is that there were a lot of tinkerers, just people building DIY computers. It was just a bunch of dorks like us who were like, these mainframes are super cool, I want one. And they started building them themselves. And in that way, that group of people had a very large impact on the industry as a whole. With POAP, I think there's a similar process happening. So we are what we are, and we try to do what we do. But a big part of what it's going to turn out to be is, what does the community do with it? What does the community push for? What does the community like and dislike? And there will be an interplay between the desires of POAP, the shepherd company of the protocol now, and the community. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I think the coolest thing is seeing how the community interacts with the protocol and how they shape each other.
That's amazing. So then, does that mean that you think the most bullish thing for POAP is when the builder program is more adopted and more, entrepreneurs are building it out? Because I feel like that's how the most value is driven then. Because, you say when these things get into the wild and it's this sort of organic evolutionary style explosion, is that where you're most bullish on POAP then?
Well, it's that, so the builder side of things, but also the user side of things. Like, if it turns out that there's now a huge boom of people using POAP checkout to fund charities, then, and I don't know, that basically becomes 90% of what POAP does. That is a signal to the company, signaling that, hey, that is something that we need to do more with, and that is how they will shape each other. So yes, it's the builders, but it's also just the users. These MetMe POAPs, for example, if that's something people keep being excited about, then that's a signal that's going to influence POAP as a whole, by making that more of a core feature in some sense.
That makes a ton of sense. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, Fio, for setting this up. I hope everyone enjoyed today. We got to meet Mentor, the amazing man behind many of the POAP issuer tools. In light of time, because we ran over here, we're going to close this out. If anyone has any questions, feel free to fire them in the chat. Perhaps Mentor will stick around, but probably not, because he has to do some deep work. So everyone, thank you so much for participating. You can find Mentor on Actually Mentor on Twitter. Mentor, any closing notes?
Well, I hope everyone enjoys their day, be it early or late.